Welcome to Fiscal Integrity Group, your ticket to bookkeeping greatness.
Hi, I'm Sandy Holst, and glad you could join us for Accounts Receivable and the Art of Collecting. This golden nugget may not necessarily be for a freelance bookkeeper, as they have already been well into this process. Having said this, if you are a freelancer and you're looking to have staff or you're trying to hire a co-op student, then bingo, you've got a quick training tool for them to hear. This knowledge nugget is designed for people in charge of accounts receivable and who are having challenges of collecting money. Actually, all of our knowledge nuggets, of course, are ideal for the student trying to suck in all the real-world information, and most certainly any bookkeeper wanting to find ways to make things easier for themselves, including freelance bookkeepers. Here are the topics that I want to cover when it comes to accounts receivable. Definitely the importance of monitoring accounts receivable. It's very important that you stay on top of collecting. I also want to go into our QuickBooks program and show you how you can utilize it to its fullest and make it easier on yourself monitoring your AR. Then we're going to get into games that people play. When it comes to collecting, there's many games out there. And to avoid these games that people play, we're going to talk about putting some safeguards in place. Let's take a look at the first topic, the importance of monitoring your accounts receivable. It is one of the most important pieces of business. I rarely called my sales a sale until the invoice has been paid. In business, it is all about receiving the money for your services or product. Some businesses are able to receive retainers or full payment in advance of providing their service or product, but many are not able to do so, and this is why we have this account. It is simply a holding account waiting for payment on invoices. In most accounting programs, you can review the aging of invoices, and this helps to prompt you to monitor and call clients or customers, reminding them payment is due or overdue. Many clients or customers have their own cash flow issues, and you need to be on your game to ensure their invoice doesn't become a bad debt. Because if you have too many bad debts, it can break the company and send it off to bankruptcy. Therefore, only in my humble opinion, I think collecting money must be a high priority for all bookkeepers. Even if you're a freelance bookkeeper and you are not hired to make collection calls, I would think it would still be up to you to flag old invoices to your client, and they can have someone else be responsible for making connection calls to the client. Put it this way, I wanted to ensure my clients' receivables were current because that meant they had money in the bank to pay my invoices. Have you ever heard the phrase, receivable rich, cash poor? This means a lot of work is being produced, and it's fabulous that the company is busy producing revenue, but it doesn't seem processes are in place for collecting the money. This is why I say a sale is not a sale until the money is collected. Cash needs to come in frequently to pay the suppliers, the staff, overhead expenses, and the government remittances. When it doesn't, this is when things start to fall and the stresses of business set in. This is when a business owner who is normally a nice person becomes a very cranky one. If you are the person in charge of collecting receivables, then you need to focus on this as a high priority within your job description. Put it this way, be the hero of the company and collect the money. Let's discuss embracing collecting. I do find there are many bookkeepers who hate making the phone calls. Sure, it is a dirty job asking people for money, but someone has to do it, and I believe that falls under the jurisdiction of a bookkeeper. Now, I'm sure there's bookkeepers out in the field that are going to disagree with me, so let's take a look at some other options. Could you pass the job off to the receptionist if there is one? Maybe. But many business owners deem this as confidential information and they won't want you to do that. Do you pass it off to the business owner? Not really, because they already have many things on their plate in a day. So who else would you pass it on to? The salespeople? Not first level, but maybe they could support you if you're having problems collecting. Therefore, I still believe collecting is the jurisdiction of the bookkeeper. If the company is outsourcing the bookkeeping to a bookkeeping firm, then it will be decided if that firm does the collection calls or the business owner designates someone else on the staff to do the job. Usually in this case, a staff member will be designated, as it would be too costly for the bookkeeping firm to make those phone calls. Let's take a look at the accounting program now, and hopefully I can show you some tips and tricks on how you can set yourself up to make it easy to track. I have opened up my fake fig sample company in QuickBooks, and I'm focusing strictly on accounts receivable. If any of you are listening and you want to learn more about QuickBooks and how it works, then there's plenty of other knowledge nuggets for you to do so. So right now what I want to do is memorize two of my favorite reports when I want to monitor accounts receivable. I'm going to come up to Report, Customer and Receivables, and Aging Summary. So this report here tells me how old my invoices are. I like to memorize my reports because most of the time I come in and I tweak how they look, because I want to have them look the way I like to see them. And I don't want to do this every single time I come in. So all I have to do here to memorize is say memorize, save and memorize a group. So maybe you want to group it under a certain section, like my financial reports, and click OK. The second report that I want to memorize is a more detailed report. So back up to the report section, customer receivables, and open invoices. This one here I'm going to tweak as well, because I don't normally use PO, but if you had PO numbers you could leave it there and use it. I don't need to see type. I know it's all invoices. And just get rid of that margin. I like to read my clients a little bit easier. And I want you to just ignore all these credits. That's for another example somewhere else. And I want to be able to read my terms and conditions properly, or my terms properly, and I think that's fine. And now I'm going to memorize, send it to financial reports, and there we go. And that is the two reports that I'm going to use to monitor my aging accounts receivable. Now let's take a look at where we memorize them. So I'm going to just pop out of here, back to the main page. If I go up to reports, there's a section called Memorized Report List. And this is where I will memorize a lot of reports for me to analyze when I think I've closed off my months or my years. And this is where I will save a lot of other reports as well, like profit and loss and balance sheet, my general ledger, and other various reports. So I pop over to here, there's my open invoices, and there's my AR aging. There we go. So let's talk about getting started. The next thing is let's go to invoices. We can create invoices here and go from here, or we can actually come up and pick the same spot here. The great thing about QuickBooks is there's many different ways of getting to the same section. So if I create an invoice here, let's just see how we can set things up to make things easier for you. So if I set ATV controls, and I pick a date of September 30th, here is where you can actually put your terms in. So if you've set up your invoice template to handle terms, this is where you can say due upon receipt, 30 days, 60 days, or whatever your terms are. You can set it up. Then we can turn around and pick whatever you're doing. So consulting services, maybe you were 10 hours on something, and we'll put that in. And maybe you charge $100 an hour. So good for you. And we're going to save and close that. And this is how you can find your terms. So if I go back over to Memorized Reports and open up Open Invoices, I can see that I have an invoice here that is for $1,130, the one that I just did, and it's not overdue at all. I've got 30 days, or the client has 30 days to pay. You will also see here when I have open invoices, here's our aging right here. And you can see that if you have a term on here, it will track the aging for you, which is absolutely fabulous that you don't have to do the math on that. Now, what about setting up your client info all by itself? Well, you can go to Customers and Customer Center. And this is where you want to put a bit of information in. So I'm going to go to ATV Controls. And if I pop into, just a double click, I can see where I'm putting all that information in here. Another great tool is if you're doing collections and this client is tardy making payments, or you don't really call the client, you call accounts receivable, and maybe you want to track your notes on this because you just find it's high maintenance and you're doing this over and over and over again, there's a notes section right here where you can add your notes. You can time sensitive it, and you can actually put exact details in here, and then you can classify it as done when everything's been taken care of. Now I'm going to backtrack for just a second here and show you how to put in a new set of terms. If you just go over to lists and come down to customer and vendor profile lists, there's your terms list right here. So just click on that. And so if I wanted to open up a term for 45 days, I'm going to come down to the bottom left and click on New. I'm going to type in 45 days, net due, so start calculating 45 days, and that's about it for setting up a new set of terms. Next on my list is I want to show you how to email an invoice. So I'm going to close this window and I'm going to pop over to my Memorize Report listing and open up Aging AR again. Now, there's many ways you can get to the invoice that I'm looking for. I'm just choosing to do it this way. And I'm going to open up Zimmerman Chemical Services. And it's very simple. You just come up to the icon, email, and voila, it's good to go. Now it also comes up with a default message, but I don't really like using the default. I like sending out something a little bit more personalized. And then you would just hit send. And that's it for that one. But there's a couple of things that I want you to see that I do to sort of be a little bit more proactive. Down here in the bottom left corner, there is a section for a memo. And this is where I will tell myself when I emailed the invoice. I do this for a couple of reasons. When somebody doesn't pay on time, I have to actually think, did I send the invoice out? So I like to say invoice emailed to the person that I emailed it to. That's their initials and the date. The second thing here is I could also continue if I've sent that email out again. This goes on forever and ever, this little function here. So then I can say, okay, I emailed it again on October 1st, 15, and then possibly October the 20th. So right off the bat, if I use this section here for dating when I have invoiced the client, it tells me how many times have I sent that invoice. So I kind of like this function. By the way, if you're interested in changing the default heading out with an emailed invoice, all you have to do is go to Edit, Preferences, Send Forms, and hit your company preferences. So this is where you would add a template and make it the way you would like to see it if you don't want to have a personalized email every time you send it to a different client. Okay? So the last thing that I want to talk about is finance charges. So what happens if you want to send out a statement with finance charges? Well, first of all, we're going to go over to Customer and create a statement. And possibly I'm going to pick October 31st and I'm just picking dates because I know how far back the invoices go that are unpaid. And I'm going to take it to October 31st. And there's a choice to do this with all your clients or customers. There's a choice to just do multiple customers, so not the entire list, or you could pick one customer of your choice. So now I'm going to preview this. And here we have the statements and everything that's outstanding plus the finance charges. And how do you set this finance charges up is you come over to assess finance charges and you could hit mark all, and your settings will be whatever percentage you want to charge. And then they will all automatically be assessed. Think before you start doing interest charges. I find it's a lot of maintenance and the people don't pay for them anyways, so it makes a little bit of a mess of your accounts receivable listing. If it's company policy to charge interest charges, absolutely go for those finance charges. But if you're not, to me, it's best to keep on top of it, be proactive, make a relationship with these people, and get the payment on time. All right, let's get back to the PowerPoint and go from there. Let's talk now about the games people play. Well, from the dawn of time, people have played games when it comes to making payment. There are many philosophies out there as to why some people hang on to their money as long as they can. I used to work for a company who had me pay government remittances on the day it was due, not one day earlier. This most likely was plainly out of spite, but these same people would always pay their supplier invoices on 40 to 60 day terms when it was really 30 days. They would never pay their finance charges either, and there's nothing I could do about it. It is what it is. If you're in charge of receivables, then make it a habit to look at them a minimum of twice per week. The health of the company depends on this money coming in. Invoice frequently. The longer you take to send the invoices, the longer it takes for the money to come in. You can backdate the invoice to the day of the service or product shipped, but most clients will pay the terms starting the day they received the invoice. Therefore, invoice as soon as the job is done. Let's take a look at the art of collecting, and that is exactly what it is. It is an art form to get someone to release money to you. There is a reason why many companies offer up 2% discount if the invoice is paid within 10 days. They are willing to lose 2% revenue than go through the hassles of multiple phone calls, emails, and arguments. Now I'd like to tell you about our processes that we had over the years. First and foremost, don't get behind on your invoicing. Do it frequently and send it via email because you have historical data of when you sent that invoice. 100% the squeaky wheel gets paid. I'm going to give you an example here. If the terms are 30 days, you want to call the client around day 25 and ask if the payment is scheduled for the following week. If you do this every month, I assure you, in most cases, your payment will be on that check run. When you get the check, deposit it as soon as possible. Don't leave checks on your desk for too long. You never know if that check is going to bounce or not. If you can, with today's technology, you should be able to set up online direct deposit as much as possible. It is very interesting how the worldwide banking system is. We had a client a few years ago whose head office was in Germany. One day when they were over here in Ontario, we got to talking about electronic banking. And it was really interesting at that time. Europe was 97% electronic banking with 3% printing checks. We kind of laughed about this because we said Canada's the exact opposite. Therefore, times are changing, and they have been changing for a long time worldwide. If you can get into as much electronic banking as possible, it means payments are coming faster and faster. Okay, the art of collecting. It is really when someone doesn't want to pay. So let's get into this. Watch your aging. I can't stress this enough. To watch your aging and target all invoices coming due for payment. Be proactive and connect in advance. If the payment doesn't arrive on time, send the invoice again, asking if they can let you know when payment is coming. If there is no response in a few days, make that phone call to their accounts payable. As for the phone call, nowadays you most likely will have to leave a message. In all cases, be polite and don't be judgmental. Sure, you really want to say, pay your freaking invoice, but that attitude most likely will have the client not pay just out of spite. I took the stance of making friends with accounts payable. Not exactly close friends, but I let them know I was just doing my job. If you are polite and friendly, they most likely will pick up the phone and talk with you. Well, if they have the personality of being polite and friendly as well. Not always. If you find you are being ignored, ask for help from the business owner or a salesperson if there is one. This is when you take it to the next level. Now it becomes a higher level person at your end talking to a higher level person on their end. If the client is having cash flow issues, then communications need to be taken place before more services or products are shipped. More on this as I get to placing your safeguards. In the end, when people are not paying their bills, you have to be consistent in being that squeaky wheel. If you let days or weeks go by, they are more than happy to do the same at their end. On to the last topic is placing your safeguards. A signed quote, service agreement, letter of engagement, purchase or sales order with terms and conditions are great tools for holding a customer to payment. If you were to send a customer to collections, the agency will most certainly want one of these agreements. These are your first order for protection, and I would advise one of them is in place for all businesses. Second order of business, it should be mentioned that every business owner and their staff do the best to keep as pleasant as a relationship with all their clients and customers as much as possible. Pleasantries go a long way. When relationships go sour, so does the payment schedule. Next, if you're also the person who takes orders for products to be shipped, review any outstanding invoices and ask for payment before you ship the newest order. I see this all the time. Products continue to be shipped and there are very old invoices still waiting for payment. Set your rules, ensure the customers know them, and then stick by them. A signed sales order is a sales agreement. I remember an instance when a client received a large order for approximately $200,000 from one of their customers. The product was coming in from China, and I was already 1 week on the ocean liner coming across the sea. Then the client canceled the order. This was thousands and thousands of dollars that my client still had to pay. And that's so unfortunate. So you want to put your safeguards in order. Once the product has left the building, whomever ordered it now owns it. When it comes to product, do your best for 50% down and final payment paid before shipping or at least upon shipping. Retainers, progress payments, and payments by credit card are all great ways to be paid quick. That's it for this knowledge nugget. I am sure we could add more to this one, but we do promise these knowledge nuggets are timed not to be too much longer than 15 minutes. If you have questions, feel free to send me a quick email. Until next time, keep crunching those numbers.
Fiscal Integrity Group, your home for the advancement of bookkeeping and bookkeepers.